Hey, well, it's Huck. And Huck is in the hospital again. I'm at University Hospitals in Cleveland. Yesterday, which would have been Saturday, was about maybe the fourth day in a row that I had some kind of new symptoms that had kind of cropped up. And now, mind you, Friday, one day earlier, was the last day that I was to take the IV treatments I had been taking for the CMV virus. So I was all set to have my PICC line, my IV line in my arm, removed. And there was a nurse comes to the house who was probably going to come and do that, scheduled to do that certainly by Monday. But as it turned out, like I said, I think maybe around Tuesday or Wednesday, I started getting some mild symptoms that something else was going on. I think I had a 99-degree fever, 99.3 or something on Wednesday. I started having a stuffy runny nose. And I started coughing a little bit and coughing up a little bit of phlegm, which I really hadn't ever had, from the time of my transplant. All of that went away when my old lungs were removed. So I knew something was up. So finally, yesterday, Saturday, I took my temperature in the morning. It was like 99.3 again. And so I took a pill that is one of the daily pills that I take, metoprolol, which is supposed to regulate your heartbeat. And usually after, a half hour or an hour after I take it, my heartbeat goes back to a normal rate. And so I waited a couple of hours and I took my temperature again, and it was 99.9. So at that point I thought, you know what? I'm going to have to call my transplant team and let them know something's up. But in the meantime, let me take a COVID test. Well, I tested positive. And so I did call my transplant team, and they got back with my doctor. At first, the transplant coordinator was going to just, because my symptoms were relatively mild, and I wasn't suffering any real lung issues. I had just been to the hospital the day before for testing, and I tested really well. Everything came out really well. My blood work was good. My breathing was real good. In fact, I tested as good on my pulmonary function test as I've ever tested. 88% lung function. It was better than the last time I had gone in. So fortunately, whatever it is, this COVID that has struck me, has not affected me, my respiratory system. And of course, that's where it gets real serious. When it hits your lungs, you got problems, especially if you're older or if you have any number of vulnerabilities, diabetes, heart disease, compromised immune system. So I'm on the list of vulnerable people that if it does start attacking my respiratory system, I could get in real big trouble real quick, because there's not really any treatments for this newest version. The bright side is that while this newest version, and they assume it's the XBB variant, but it's hard to say. In Northeast Ohio, it may account anywhere from 40 to 60% of cases. So there's a good chance that's what I have. It's not the only possibility, though. So they decided, after talking with my doctor, who's kind of in charge of my care, that they wanted me to come into emergency, get admitted, and get some of these Remdesivir treatments. They're IVs. They're about a half-hour-long treatment, IV. And again, as a precaution, if I wouldn't have had the lung transplant, they probably, as mild as my symptoms have been, they probably would let me just ride it out. But given, my situation, to be a little extra cautious, they told me to come in. So they admitted me. I had my first treatment yesterday. They gave me a second treatment today. They're going to give me a third treatment tomorrow. Now, I had also been scheduled to have another treatment for something else. Something in my blood that lowered my immunity, my white blood cell count, or my, I don't know, something globin in my blood. That, so I was supposed to go in. There was only a couple of university hospital facilities that give these infusion treatments, and you have to be there for like 4 or 5 hours. I guess the IV treatment itself is like 2 or 3 hours long, and the rest is all, other stuff they got to do. But since I had to break that appointment because I'm here, they're going to give me that treatment tomorrow as well. So the most up-to-date information that I have is that there's a good chance after I get those 2 IV treatments tomorrow, the infusion thing, for the for whatever, and this Remdesivir antiviral treatment for the COVID, I should be able to go home. So I'm expecting to go home tomorrow, Monday, probably sometime after 4 o'clock. But I won't know that for sure until I talk to my doctor, Dr. Shills, who will come in the morning. Say he should be here before 10:30 in the morning. And at that point, now this guy tends to be on the cautious side. And it seems like every time I've come into the hospital, whether it was for the transplant or, when I had a setback when I was supposed to go home after the transplant, I had the fluid in the lung. Then I came down with the CMV virus, and that put me in the hospital for 2 weeks. I was hoping to go home a few days earlier than I did. But every time I get to that point where, well, you said I'd be going home after, on Friday or whatever, they tend to, tend to hold me a few extra days every time. Again, out of an abundance of caution, I guess. So I can't guarantee I'm going to be going home tomorrow. Normally, when they give you this Remdesivir, which I think is the same medication that they were giving everybody, was hard to get. Famous people and celebrities and stuff were able to get it, but a lot of average Joes weren't necessarily able to get it. Maybe if you were high risk, you got it. At any rate, I believe it's the same medication that they gave, Joe Biden when he came down with COVID. I think it's the same medication that they gave to Trump when they rushed him to Bethesda Hospital during his presidency, and he famously made the CIA drive him around D.C. and then take him back to the White House, and he tore off his mask on the balcony that night. But typically, they give you 5 treatments over 5 days. In my case, they suggested they wanted to at least give me 3. So I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop for them to tell me, no, we're going to make you take 5. And I'll end up being here till like Wednesday or something. But truth is, I've got things to do at home. I have managed to avoid COVID for 3 years. And I was always under the impression, even before I had the lung transplant, my COPD was so bad that, even my doctors at the time had convinced me that if I had gotten COVID, it could be a mortal issue for me. So, when I tested positive yesterday, my first thoughts were, oh boy, here we go. But then I thought about it, and I thought, I probably had this, I've had symptoms of this. I've probably had this, symptoms now, for 4 days, because I started feeling symptoms Tuesday. And in all reality, I probably was exposed to it much sooner. I just didn't test positive for it after I caught it, because there's a gestation period, and it varies from individual to individual. When you're exposed to COVID and it's transmitted to you, for at least 2 or 3 days, you're not going to test positive for it. And each different variant averages a different length of time for that. For the current variant that's out there right now that seems to be most prevalent, this XBB that came from Asia and Europe. XBB variant has about a 3-day gestation period. In other words, you catch it, for 3 days you don't have any symptoms, for 3 days you don't test positive for it, but for 3 days you have it and you are contagious. You are transmitting it to other people you come into contact with. But that's the average. Other variants had, a 2 to 5 day period or a 2 to 10 day period. But most of these variants can have, in the extreme, a gestation period of up to 14 days, which means you could be exposed to, COVID, and go 14 days before you would even test positive for it. In the meantime, for most of that time, you're contagious. Generally, if you have a mild case or no symptoms at all, it runs its course in about 10 days. In my situation, because my immune system is compromised, and I'm taking injections while I'm here, one of the other medications they're giving me is shots in the abdomen, kind of like, insulin treatment, or some of these blood thinner treatments that I've been taking every day. They've given me a shot yesterday, they gave me a shot today to hike up my white blood cell count, because which are, your big defense mechanisms. Well, my count is really low, in part because I'm taking the anti-rejection medications. So they're trying to beef that up. So they're trying to balance, the anti-rejection with the other. And that's another reason why I'm in the hospital. So they can monitor, everything. At any rate, I'm anxious to get home. I'm feeling great. I really have not had any symptoms that have really bothered me. I've not had a fever today. Physically, I seem to be, as well as I've been all week. So I'm not getting worse. If they would let me out of my room, which they won't because I've got COVID, I would put on a mask and grab the, walker and take some laps around the little hallway setup they've got here, but I can't leave the room. The good news is they gave me a slightly bigger room, so I guess there's a little room to walk around here. At any rate, so that's what's going on. Today is Sunday. You can tell it's Sunday because the Browns lost another game. And like I said, there's a good chance I'm going to come home tomorrow or Tuesday, I'm guessing, but you never know. That's the monitor in the back. They have me hooked up to these little battery-operated things. It looks like this. And they've got all these 5 of these little things attached to my chest, And it gives you all these results up there you see in the back. Everything from, mostly it's a heart monitor, but it checks a few other things. But like I say, most of my numbers have been pretty normal. And still taking all my medications. So I'm feeling fine. It looks like I'm going to get through this, There are people that, are fine for a few days and then they get a relapse or they get much worse. And I guess that's the one thing that we've got to, be aware of, is that, I'm not out of the woods until I'm out of the woods. So they gave me a COVID test yesterday once I got here, which I assume was positive. But they don't plan on giving me another one. So once I do get home, I have a number of test kits that I've ordered. In fact, I just got more in yesterday that came, took advantage of, ordering some more that are free while they're still free. And so I got about 8 or 12 more tests that came in, some from the post office and through some medical supplies place that probably charged my insurance company for them. But at any rate, they were free to me. So, and I still had, I don't know, 8 or 12 tests at home, although I think one box was slightly expired at this point. So I've got plenty. So I figure whenever I do go home, probably beginning the next day, so if I go home tomorrow, Tuesday, I will start taking daily COVID tests. And, and I won't feel like I'm out of the woods until I test negative. For most normal people, like I say, a mild case of COVID would probably run its course within about 10 days. That's what happened with Dustin. Dustin, tested negative. Tested negative really for the first time a day before I needed him to come and take me here. The other bad thing about the new variant, the XBB version, I assume same is true with the BK1 and the BK11, is that if you do get it, you don't get like lasting antibodies to prevent you from getting it again. Normally when you get a virus, and this was true with the earlier viruses of COVID, if you get the virus and you recover from it, your body learns how to fight it and it prevents you from getting it again, at least for, a while, maybe a year or two. But apparently that's not the case as this virus has been evolving. And the new Omicron strains, which the latest variants are from that family of COVID-19, they are not affected by vaccines for the most part. They're not affected by any treatments for the most part, and they're not, and they don't give you lasting antibodies to prevent you from getting the same thing again. So there have been plenty of cases of people that have gotten the XBB virus and gotten over it, and a week or two later, boom, they got it again, and this time they got it more severe. So these are all things that, I'm sure they're taking into consideration as they're treating me and making decisions on, like, should I go home? And if I do, what precautions do I need to take? So, but that's where we're at. And, I had just read an article, I don't know, maybe Friday or Saturday, that said that if this new XBB COVID is by far the most contagious variant, that we've seen, so contagious that if you haven't had COVID yet, you will. You'll get this. That's what the article's message was. And, and here I am. So, maybe there's some truth to that because I was able to avoid it, as far as I know, for, 3 years. But we are where we are. The good news is so far, like I say, it's not affecting me in any really too adversible way, other than, giving me another hospital visit, more hospital bills, and more, laying down than I would like. I would like to be, getting around and moving around and exercising a little bit more. Between the cold weather and all of these, viruses that I'm catching them, I feel like I'm, walking backwards. So anyway, I'm eager to get out of here and get, back to some exercises, and I'll be glad when I'm over this. So anyway, I will update you as things change, but for now, I think I'll get over this just fine. Thanks for watching, and I will talk to you again real soon.